He's like, hey, what we really need is just space to pause and reflect and to hear other people share their sense of authenticity of actually what's going on, because we can't do it in our organizational culture. So thank you for creating the space to do it with one another.
Like, we've become so distracted with achievement and work and performance and managing all these contexts and engineering all these situations that we think are going to deliver on what we want, that we've never been taught, and we've coped and we've forgotten the simple practices of getting what we actually need as a full human being. And so at some level, it's like the most valuable thing is like, let's go back to the basics of what it means to be a person and how to connect with someone else. All right, today I'm joined by Lantz Howard. Lantz, introduce yourself. Who are you and why are you here?
Yeah, Ian, I'm honored by the invite to have a conversation today. So I'm an executive level transformation marriage coach, serving CEOs and high capacity men all over the country, helping them not only transform their marriage, but also live a wholehearted, more spacious life that God has intended for all of us.
Love it. So I'm tempted to jump right in on how you became a marriage coach, or why that's kind of what you lead with or what you focus on, which I do want to talk about. But real quick first, before we started recording, you're asking some tactical questions. So let's work through that real quick and then we'll jump into the bigger picture.
Yeah, tactical questions, since you've been helping me understand products and services and ensuring my funnel is working the right way. In particular, one of the pay performs, the assessments, I need to shift and adjust the last one, two, three, three questions, and really just make it like, hey, what's your budget for coaching? What do you really want to most improve in the next 6 months? What role are you? More specifically, like, hey, I'm honored to spend time with you in a conversation, but I'm looking for like clarity around, like right now it says like, how do you see yourself? What is one new insight and what action can you take? I'm like, there's a lot of guys that have just kind of left that blank. The one this morning that came in didn't. So I'm looking for more specific action, call to action.
Specificity.
Yeah, there we go. And less ambiguity at the end of the assessment.
Okay. So contextually, the paper form is sort of an interest form in your funnel. And what you're trying to do with this form is not only as a sort of have it act as a tripwire for their interest, but some sorting, qualification, and routing to what the next step is, correct?
100%. Yeah.
Okay. So those questions that you're talking about asking are essentially fit questions. It sounds like, are qualification questions. Are you having a conversation based on their budget and their timeline and those things about a certain tier of service, or do they just want resources and nurture content, basically?
Yeah, if they got that far, hopefully they're looking to actually take action as a coaching client versus like, maybe this is something we could even explore. Like, if they choose an option that the budget doesn't fit, then like, oh, thanks for coming. Here's a free PDF, but I'm gonna honor your time and my time by declining, a call.
Yeah. Okay. So easy changes to make. Obviously, we're just tweaking the form that exists there. Do you have so we'll do that. But this kind of dovetails back into the larger question. So as you've found that specificity around the marriage coaching or the relationship piece, that I know that your services and what you're capable of helping executives with goes beyond that. But it seems like you're really making that the focus and leading with that so that it draws out the right people. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you arrived at that particular positioning or focus?
Yeah, I guess part of it's the truth is I'm trying not to hide behind my own story and some of my own leadership pains and wounds and marriage, and the growth that God has allowed me. But the second thing is that I've just really tried to pay attention to the men that I'm currently serving and or have served in the past, that they know my background in spiritual formation. They know my background as a marriage therapist, and they know my background as a trained executive coach. Initially, I thought the pain point was always going to be around like, hey, I just want to do leadership coaching with you and serve you and your team and your organization and your business. But the truth is, almost every single conversation, whether it was 30 days or 90 days, they always wanted to talk about the pain points around their marriage. And so for me, I've just tried to own that space. And even my most recent clients over the last 90 days, I've noticed the more in particular that I'm calling out those pain points, it seems like the flywheel just in my business is starting to have some momentum behind it, and that I'm actually to serve out of a, more out of a 10x promise versus like, hey, we're getting together and we're having these weird conversations that hopefully you grow, right? And hopefully there's this nice retainer package in it, but so I'm just really looking to help them transform in 90 days. And if they want to continue something after that, great. But the goal right now is to transform them in their leadership in the context of their marriage.
Hmm. So tell me about the intersection of like you're helping executives. How do they get to a point? Like, what is their typical journey where they get to a point where they realize that they not just need help or coaching or more success in the traditional executive coach, space, but specifically uh, realize like, hey, I need help in my marriage relationship or leadership of family or relational connection.
Yeah. One particular business owner that I'm thinking about, multiple businesses, doing great, by all modern success standards. But he would describe it as this sense of like, man, I go home and I'm just not very present with my wife, right? When we go out on date nights, all I can think about is like the business and how do I provide for my team. What about this team member that I need to have a crucial conversation with about potentially firing them? And so a lot of it's the pain points around business, but their desire is to be more present and connected with their wife because they are feeling not chosen or less desirable from their wife in a way that's like, man, I might as well just work more if she's not going to choose me. But the truth is, you can only control who you are in the space that you take up. And so it's helping them come into the space of like owning what is theirs to own and leading their relationship, leading the marriage, leading the family, in many regards of what they do naturally at work. But I find that most men, unfortunately, just kind of resign that position over time because it begins to be too much. Like, right, they do all the things all week long, leading other people, even doing good church activities and leading ministries there. But then they don't have anything left over because they're not asking for their own needs to be met and reciprocated with other friends and or even their wife. And so it's really just trying to help them come into an integrated space that they are aware of, like actually what's going on, and helping them take action in some of these areas of their life.
Hmm. So many key words that I've heard or strands that I kind of want to threads I want to pull and follow. But I want to ask, even before that, it seems like there's some layer of irony where a lot of people, in my context or my experience at least, pursue career, pursue work, especially if they're starting a business or something like that, in large part, not wholly, but in large part, with this presumption that once I have success here, it will create the security which will sort of liberate me, free me up to engage fully in these other relationships, primarily spouse and family, that they really want. So, that's sort of the core desire there. And yet, what you're describing, it sounds like it's actually the work and the pursuit of that proximate goal, that thing that they think is a stepping stone to intimacy, that actually becomes the obstacle to intimacy. Am I hearing that right?
100%. So, for example, like Harvard Business Review and many other organizations, the last 5 years, really, but the last 8 years have been studying this concept around flourishing. And what they're finding really around high achievers, high capacity business owners, CEOs, is that they're really, really, really good at working. But that's the only metric for flourishing that they have to hold on to. And so when they get to the quote unquote end of their life, or when they're feeling burnt out, or when the stress in the marriage is going on, they're like, everything's good around me. I can't figure out why this relationship is suffering. And it's like, well, because the only metric that you have for flourishing is by how many zeros are in your bank account. But true human flourishing is going to be more robust and deeper, and it's always going to the heart, right? It's always going on to what's happening inside of you, and how are you leading out of that posture. Because when the metric is always work related, we're going to get empty to varying degrees, even though that God created us to co-labor and to work with Him. So that's one thing that I'm finding, but I'm also finding it true in, nuance of my story. Years ago, becoming an executive leader of a nonprofit, did that role for 3 years, but I look back now, and those first 2 years were just overwhelming because I did not realize how much my own people-pleasing tendencies were coming out at the time. Because high achievers, CEOs, you don't get there on accident. You get there by actually taking care of everybody else, serving the board's needs, and you actually end up becoming a silent yes man, which may sound counterintuitive to many high achieving leaders, because it's like, well, I'm assertive, like I'm this guy, and it's like, well, that may be true, but you're not assertive with your own heart. You're not assertive with your own needs. You're actually just serving everybody else to the detriment of your own health, your own leadership, and ultimately your marriage and family as well.
That's really fascinating. I mean, I see a juxtaposition of the artist and the businessman in a way. Like they're both driven by a desire for connection, a desire to be seen, known, and loved like everyone else. But the artist is committed to pursuing the vision that they see and the beauty that they see, and exploring that and digging into it, even when it alienates them from all the people around them. Certainly you can have artists who, work to the popular taste or whatever you will, but that's sort of the pure artist who's in pursuit of this thing that they uniquely see in spite of their material, the material rewards of it. Seems to me to be kind of paradigmatically at the opposite end of the spectrum from the businessman who still wants that connection, still wants that, but the way that they pursue it is by managing the situation, managing the stakeholders, blocking everything else out, including and especially themselves in their own heart, in order to achieve the goals and the things, which may be good things. There, a lot of good work and good things that comes out of that leadership, but it's fundamentally dictated by someone else. So I'm interested to dig in a little bit on what it actually looks like. So the symptom that people say, I feel disconnection in marriage, we'll call it materially or situationally, everything that I experience is flourishing, and yet come home and don't experience connection, don't experience motivation or fulfillment. I might have burnout or whatever those symptoms are. So there's a disconnection from self, from purpose, from others that are outside of the work context. So somebody engages. What is the day-to-day work of reintegration or pursuing flourishing look like for these folks?
Always one or two things that I try to point to. One is many of these men they don't call themselves lonely because they're actually surrounded by numerous people. But once you start digging deeper, they feel lonely. They feel isolated. They're not fully known. They're not fully know who they're belonging to, because they can't make themselves known in a boardroom or with their partner in business. So that's probably one of the number one things that we begin to work on is like, hey, who are your friends? Where are you connected in the context of your community that you're safe with and known with? And so that's a process in time, because you have to really create space in your calendar to find like-minded people that can pursue, like, hey, I want to be known. Would you like to be known with me? Can we show up and talk about what we're truly afraid of? Can we show up and talk about what we really feel? Man, I'm afraid of feeling inadequate. Like, man, I'm afraid of like, what if Q4, as we record this, doesn't go well and I have to lay off 10 people when January gets here? Can I have those deep and robust conversations? What where do you go to talk about, like, man, I don't know if I surely believe in this whole God story right now in this season of my life. Man, I would love to have more sex and intimacy with my wife. Like, where are those conversations at? Because in my experience, you have to fight for those relationships. And so that's one of the first things that we begin on to work on. But this is really all rooted back into you and I's heart language as well. Just it's rooted back into identity. The more that a man knows his identity, not on a theological level, because I think we all know that, like, man, I'm a child of God, I'm a beloved son, but even deeper than that, like, have you heard and received or sensed the voice of God lately? Like, how is he communicating to you when you're out on a walk? How is he communicating to you when you're journaling? How is he communicating to you when you're reading the word? And so those are other things that we begin to work on is the depth of your identity beyond being overly attached to your identity at work. Because when I resigned from my nonprofit role, I was like, I didn't know who I was, because I've always identified myself as that person. But if you can really go multiple layers deep on recovering your sense of a true identity, then no matter what comes in life, you're always attached and grounded to that space, ultimately, with God and with Christ.
Hmm. It's interesting that, like, an interesting dynamic that to someone whose identity and whose true role is to be a leader, almost is predisposed for a sense of loneliness. I mean, you have the it's lonely at the top kind of thing, which is true in one level. People have a hard time relating to you, the responsibility, the burden, and the success of that. But at a much deeper level, is in your role as leader, you are responsible for and representing other people, which means that uh, it's not a space where you are likely to have the freedom or um, goodwill even to be fully seen and fully known. And so in some ways you take on this role of being a leader and deliberately set aside those things, at least in that context of being seen and known. And it sounds like what you're saying is that what's important for those folks is to recognize leadership is a part of my calling, my identity in this role. But even in order for me to fulfill that role as best I can, I need to be seen and known as a person in these other contexts. I need to have these relationships with the security in the space where I can be seen and known, because loneliness is not about proximity to people. It's about being seen and known and yet loved, right? So it's fascinating that, like, I'm hearing a theme of the people who are equipped and called to this role are almost predisposed uh, to this disconnection that creates a sense of loneliness or discontent in spite of their success in that role.
Well, even in that, like, one of the pain points I call out is like, do you feel disconnected from your wife? And the perception is always, well, that's on her, right? She's not initiating intimacy. She's not initiating sex, and so I feel disconnected. One, because as men, uh, that's how we intuit or understand emotional connection with our wife, right? But the truth is, you don't feel disconnected from your wife as much as what you just really feel disconnected from yourself, right? So it's coming back to that space of like, okay, what is really going on in you? Because if I was to ask you, Ian, like, do you want to be known as a needy man? Like we don't raise our hand and be like, hey, I'm needy, like I'm over here. But the only way that you begin to get known is by raising your hand and saying, man, I would like a hug when I get home from work. Would you be able to reciprocate that need with me? And once we begin to learn some of these practices of raising our hand of our desires, wants, and needs, then we're like, oh, people really do accept me unconditionally as we start to take some of these small risks together.
Man, that's I'm chuckling. It's so funny that I mean, in my own story, I see this as a theme going back a long ways of uh, we're taught at some level, or at least we learn somehow, not to ask for what we want and need, but instead try to engineer the circumstances which we think will deliver the fulfillment of those wants and needs. And so we work so hard to get the things we think we need, and then we're disappointed when it's usually not even that other people actually disappoint us. It's that they look at the circumstances, they look at the achievement or the work or whatever, and don't even remotely connect the dots between, oh, this is what he's doing and this is what he wants from that, right? So there's just built-in frustration, built-in um, like some shame around standing up and saying, in an appropriate context, obviously, but saying, this is what I want and need. Can you give that to me? Can you help me with that? And what I'm hearing you say is I shouldn't put on the board meeting agenda uh, intimacy. I desire more intimacy with my wife. Can you guys help me with that? But in the right context, being able to show up fully, even when that means vulnerably asking for something that we want and need, matters, and it's good and okay to do that.
What I know is true in my story, because I also know it's true in many of the men I serve, is that a lot of this is the wounding that has been caused in our own leadership stories. But even if you look back further in all of our lives, there's woundings that we've learned how to operate in the world. And so going back to even what you said, like once I learned how to operate based on those wounds, then that's how I'm understanding that I'm loved, right? And so if you didn't get unconditional love, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that your parents, with their best intentions, gave you what they had to give you, there's still subtle cues and signals that they've sent you of like, well, this is how you earn, this is how you achieve, this is how you receive our love. And so that begins this weird hamster wheel of success and achievement and performance that we don't even have a clue that's going on until a lot of the men I begin to ask them, like, well, when did you first feel inadequate? What's the earliest memory of that? And sometimes they can't go back there and, on that first or second or third conversation. But it's just an ongoing process and work of like, okay, that's okay, right? But how do you invite Jesus to heal that memory and make that a more connected and whole and resilient place in you so that you can have a creative mind that unlocks the future of not only your marriage, but also your business as well?
Hmm. So good, man. There's so many paths I want to follow on that. You talk about imagination and vision for what could be and the way things ought to be, and then story in the past. But that connects a couple of important dots for me. That it sounds like what you're saying is that until you have a secure sense of your own identity or a secure relationship in a way with your story and who you are, then at some level it's impossible to feel seen and known by another. So we feel rejected or we feel disconnected from those around us, especially those most important relationships in our life. But what you said way back at the beginning of that's sort of the symptom of disconnection, but the real source of the disconnection is actually disconnection from yourself first. Uh, that seems like a major aha moment. Is that so? Is that true? First of all, is that what you're suggesting? And then, if so, uh, if you're willing, you can tell me sort of what your journey is and coming to realize that and understand that that's the crux of the disconnection that you're experiencing is actually an identity issue before it's a relational issue?
Yes is the short answer. The long answer is uh, all of us are in process, right? And so as I look at my story and the nuances around my story, and as I better understand those that I'm serving, and integrating all these stories in a way that helps people transform their life, um, for me, in that moment when I didn't have language for it at the time, all I knew is that my pain was around the organization, because I allowed uh, unresolved conflict, was really what it was. I allowed unresolved conflict to grow and fester and become bitter in me, versus seeking to say, like, man, I disagree, like, right. And that comes to a posture of like, how do you walk with I statements and not make it about the organization, or not make it about the leader, not make it about your wife, and paying attention to like how your body's responding, and be like, man, that feels off to me. I disagree, but I don't even know why I disagree, but I'm going to try to talk this out with you because it feels really uncomfortable. But I want to feel uncomfortable so I can feel reconnected to you in our relationship, and so that we can help this organization heal and grow forward as well. But that's not the path I chose, right? I chose a completely different path, and it came out in the season. It came out as faith, and it was complete faith that I left that organization. But there was a complete passive aggressive blow up episode, right? Of all this built up anger that I had going on, because what I've been told is like, as a Christian nice guy, you hold everything together, right? And so, well, what do you do with the anger that's going on in your chest? What do you do with the anxiety that's going on in your mind when you're supposed to hold this all together? Now I just call it my self-righteous, prideful heart of being the good son who didn't realize the goodness of the Father in the house of the Lord, right? And so for me, it's just walking a path of saying, man, I feel really inadequate even trying to have this conversation right now. But will you have some grace with me as I try to unpack my thoughts, right? And if you're more assertive and if you're more clear in the moment, just start in that place of like, hey, I feel disconnected right now, and I totally disagree with what just happened in the board meeting. Or hey, I get home with my wife and man, I feel lonely, and I would love to figure out what reconnection looks like with you over the next 6 weeks together. I've already planned a night away for us 4 weeks from now. Like, what would you like to do or be included in this partnership as well? And so, granted, there's a lot of nuances to that, but it is a sense of disconnection that you don't have what I call emotional handlebars to describe what's going on inside. But as soon as you have that language that's been lost, but it's there. But as soon as you have some of that language, going back to 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you're like, oh, I have a sense of agency in my life, and I don't have to play the role that I've been playing, and I can step into a more spacious and vibrant life in all of my roles that God has given me.
That sense of playing a role seems really important. That, like, I hear you describing the sort of accumulated harm that we cope with rather than actually deal with. We cope with it by disassociating or disintegrating, even what you're describing of, I deny this feeling that I feel because in my head, it's not, you're not allowed to say that thing in this context, or you're not allowed to do so. So I'm going to shut down at some level in order to survive that anger, those emotions, or whatever. Disintegrate in order to cope with that feeling. And then, I mean, there's behavioral things that can come out of that coping as well. But the fundamental disintegration, and then in a professional context, what I most often see is instead of that raising red flags or inviting us into something deeper and reintegration and a relational repair after rupture, we go the opposite direction. We either try to find a context, or even if we're the leader, create architect a system, architect a culture that protects us from those feelings, right? So you have, and this isn't the case in all cases, but in many, I think, um, you have essentially codependency happening where you get a leader that builds an organization full of people who will say what he needs to hear or reflect only the parts that, help him stay safe and cope and avoid those deeper, bigger things. And then somehow we're surprised 5, 10 years down the road when turns out it's a abusive culture or there's something blows up and something breaks down spectacularly. And it's like, well, this has been a pattern that you've been living into and inviting for this, uh, probably since childhood, but certainly professionally or since you've been a leader. Now, all that to say, I want your take on like, that's not really their fault. It's not like it's not, none of us wakes up in the morning and goes, you know what I want to do? I want to live like a narcissist and build an autocratic organization that only exists to protect me from the wounds of my story. And yet most of us functionally live that way. So, how do we get, I hear what part of what your work is doing is shining a light on this issue or inviting people into, hey, let's acknowledge those feelings and then do something productive with it rather than destructive. Can you tell me about either that journey in your life or sort of how that plays out in the marketplace of, you hold up a mirror, if you will, and then how people respond to that invitation.
Some of my greatest work in particular this year has been helping an organization have language around this, because I think unless an organization, team, marriage is choosing health, then right, I love what you said about you're just architecting your own culture, your own ecosystem that allows you to continue to hide, right? And so you continue to drive at the pace that you're driving because you're choosing not to be known. But for those organizations, what I say, like for leaders who want a healing organizations, for leaders who want to heal their marriages, the path really is like just going back. I mean, as silly as it sounds, like finding one of those color wheels, and printing it out like I've done, and setting it on your dinner table and be like, hey, let's like work through this together this week as a family. Like, what'd you feel today at school? Like, oh, what was that feeling about? Share more. So some of this is just like, I just truly believed early on in some of my coaching, like, oh, I've got to have the latest assessment and the latest gadget. But man, I think it's super, super simple that people are just longing to be human, longing for belonging and connection. Um, but we're all coping, we're all anxious, we're all stressed out to the max. And so we don't even know how to slow down long enough to come together to have language that we can sharpen one another with.
Yeah.
In fact, I host a Monday group, and I was talking to one of the leaders. He's like, man, thank you for keeping that so simple. Because of my insecurity, like I want to show up and do this robust leadership presentation or this, like, hey, here's how to have more intimacy with your wife by Friday type of deal. He's like, hey, what we really need is just space to pause and reflect and to hear other people share their sense of authenticity of actually what's going on, because we can't do it in our organizational culture. So thank you for creating the space to do it with one another.
Man, I love that so much. And I'm chuckling as you're talking because like, uh, in a way to honor your work, it's not a pejorative at all, but I feel like the most important thing that you do is like remedial human being skills, right? Like we've become so distracted with achievement and work and performance and managing all these contexts and engineering all these situations that we think are going to deliver on what we want that we've never been taught, and we've coped and we've forgotten the simple practices of getting what we actually need as a full human being. Um, and so at some level, it's like the most valuable thing is like, let's go back to the basics of what it means to be a person and how to connect with someone else. And I love that. I do think it is the most important work that can be done, especially for high achievers. And I think, I mean, this is a definite risk of projecting. I think some of what you were describing earlier, like I have this chorus that rings in my head in so many different contexts, but especially work, that um, most people are chiefly engaged in the making and maintenance of a world small enough for their God. And when their God is their own power or their own coping or their own connection to some particular person or success or respect or whatever, then they engineer all parts of their life to get that proximate thing. And instead of learning from the disappointment that achieving that proximate thing delivers and repenting and finding a different way, we just double down. We just go, no, you know what? I just didn't get enough respect. I need some more money. No, I just didn't get enough success. I didn't get enough of that. I wasn't maniacally focused enough on that one thing. And then, oh, somebody else has got more and they look happy. So let's go imitate that. But we do it at every stage of development and at every level of the thing that we think will give us security becomes the target. And then we engineer our entire life to optimize for that thing, even though that thing becomes our master and is abusive, frankly. And I love what you're doing in that just like, let's slow down, let's have this experience because that experience creates um, not just an invitation, it actually creates change. You're familiar with Kurt Thompson, but the interpersonal neurobiology, where you can show it in the lab of the change that happens in the wiring of the brain that allows your body to reconnect and rebuild pathways when you experience connection with someone else. And so I love how you're starting there by being like, let's just slow down and let's create the circumstances in which you can experience this thing, which will then give you hope to want more of it and maybe open up the opportunity of can I do some deliberate work? Can I pursue this thing rather than spend all of my time engineering these circumstances that I think are going to deliver that?
Well, there's two things I'll pull on there. First is your body. Like, right, if you don't even know what's going on in your body, like how do you show up in the bedroom, much less the boardroom? Uh, so like one of the things I'll often do coaching guys in person or over Zoom is I'm like, hey, let's just practice a few breathing techniques real quick. But like, do you even notice your butt in the chair like in this moment? Like, can you even feel like unless I'm standing up, like, can you even feel your feet in this moment? And like all of a sudden, it's a reorientation around your mind trying to connect to like this physical space that you're actually taking up. And so you begin to do some of these body and mindful breathing techniques, and you become more aware of who you are. That goes to the other point is that God is always trying to invite us into initiating more of our heart to represent more of Christ, right? I always think of Colossians as just like we are in this process of becoming Christ. Colossians 3:17, it's like the more that we're becoming like him, it's actually reflecting his glory. And so these places are an invitation to initiate our hearts in a way that we can surrender uh, more of our false self into our true identity with him. But how I see this show up in my own life and other leaders is that, for real example, is like what happens when your wife says no to sexual preference, desire, want, or need? Like, do you go and turn over like a 3-year-old in bed? Or do you say, man, I love you. I'm so glad that you made your needs known, but I look forward to connecting with you 2 nights from now. Because I've experienced in my own life this unhealthy sense of attachment, this unhealthy sense of like, I don't even know my own identity, but I keep going to this organization or I keep going to my wife looking to validate my own heart. And God's like, no, like that piece of you, when you feel rejected, I'm actually trying to draw you closer to who I want you to be and become, because it's not about your wife. Because like, what if you don't have a great sexual intimacy? What if you don't close the next 7-figure deal? Do you still trust me enough on this journey that we're on to help you become more like Christ in every aspect of your life.
Hmm. Yeah, man, so good. Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is at some level like a codependency, right? In that
Sure.
unhealthy space, um, which resolves in an equilibrium of affirmation, which we see everywhere in the world, right? Like, not only do I need to be affirmed in this way in order to feel secure and to feel at peace with myself, but even the presence, even knowing that somebody out there exists who wouldn't affirm me in this way is disruptive to me and like destroys my identity. And so now it becomes my life calling to either make my world small enough that I can pretend that person doesn't exist or to actually defeat them because they are a mortal enemy. And it creates this like, we think that getting that affirmation is going to give us security. And yet it's inflationary, right? There's no amount of affirmation that we can get from somebody else, whether a spouse or a colleague or, coach or whomever, that's going to satisfy and ultimately give us the sense of security that we're seeking. And yet the alternative is so radically upside down in our typical calculus, if you will, of no, my identity isn't in that affirmation. It is in being a beloved child of God, an image bearer. And not only that, but one whose essential goodness, not righteousness, but essential goodness is apparently so precious that God would send his only son to redeem them. Uh, if the identity is rooted there, then it flips the equation where there's no amount of rejection that I'm not saying it's not that rejection's pleasant or that we shouldn't, that we should just seek it or something like that. But there's no amount of rejection from another person. There's no amount of lack of affirmation that is going to shake our secure identity when it is rooted in our true identity. And that's like making that pivot is what's so fascinating because I want to ask you like, all right, so you've got people who come to you for help because they have some symptom crop up, right? This is how I feel. I don't know how to deal with it. What part of what we've been talking about is that people want the security that comes from their true identity. But you and I have not in this conversation, but have previously talked a lot about you can't market that. The thing that we want most deeply, you cannot sell because nobody is buying it, right? Nobody's sitting out there, going online or whatever and typing in the search like, how do I have a secure identity? They're all trying to buy the thing that they think is going to deliver that approximate thing, whether it's business success or relational affirmation or whatever it is. That's the thing that they will put money and time into because it sort of makes sense to how they model the world in terms of I do these things, I perform in this way, and then I get this result. And now I have that security, even though we know that fails. So I want to hear from you. Like you've had a journey and you've had some experience, but how do you market? How do you almost back into delivering the thing that nobody is out there searching for or buying?
Well, if I would have listened to my wife several years ago, I would probably be further in my journey. She said exactly this. She said, you just need to tell men that you help them make more money and have better sex with their wife. And I'm like, well, that just feels like, right? Like for me, I'm still trying to understand parts of my own shame story. And I'm like, well, that just feels so like counterintuitive. Like, right? That feels like one of those machismo, false Facebook advertisements, but the reality is that's why I've doubled down on just owning that I'm an executive level CEO marriage transformation coach to help faith driven entrepreneurs have more sex connection and intimacy with their wife. Because as soon as you call out that pain, then I can begin to do good work with these amazing, honorable men. I'm thinking of one guy in particular several weeks ago after our first session. He said, man, I did not expect this at all. And he said, in fact, my wife is going to be glad to hear that I actually had some emotion and cried in our session today. And I'm like, well, if tears are a sign of transformation, great. But the truth is just that if there were quick fixes, then all the PDFs in the world out there, all the free ebooks, all the podcasts would have already fixed what your heart is longing for. But as soon as we come into relationship, I can stand in who God has gifted me with and equipped me with, and then I can begin to serve other people. And even the truth is, in some of my own insecurities, like I want to be the successful entrepreneur that has 3 7-figure businesses, but that's not the gift that God has given me. I know that I create a robust level of safety with the right people, and that they're unable to unpack actually what's going on. So for me, it's really stepping beyond my shame and my own stories, and trying to own the depth and the richness of what God has done in my life, and He continues to do. But now I offer that gift back, to other people. And I honestly, I think I was just trying to hide from it for too long, under this like, oh, I'm just this nice guy, and I'll be here to serve you if you want to do executive coaching. But no, like it's so much more spacious to me to own this voice that God has given me, because I think there's so many men out there that long for it as well.
I was under the impression that you had it all figured out, so I think we can just wrap up and. No, what I do hear you saying that's so important. One is the freedom that comes from embracing true identity and doing the work of dealing with the things that are genuinely wrong about our genuinely wounds from our story, and then living into that true identity. And I love what you say, PDFs versus a relationship is the difference between, information in the first place and transformation in the second place. Knowing in your head all the right ways to do it is one thing, and it's not bad to know information, but it's trivia compared to the transformation that happens when you actually integrate that knowledge, and that has to happen in relationship, whether it's coaching or whether it's friendship, whether it's a community of some kind. It's how we were built, and I love the work you're doing. Yeah, man, we could go on forever, but what else do you want to talk about? Anything before we wrap up?
Man, this is so good. No, I don't think anything in particular is coming to mind.
How about top 3 most common practical tips that you're giving executives early in an engagement? So consider like the rookie level, implementation or changes that you're recommending.
Yeah, that's good. So, like, very pragmatic tools, frameworks that I could give somebody, like, right, whether they choose to engage me in a coaching relationship or not. It's what I practice, and what I also help guys rediscover is really one of my journaling practice right now is writing down 5 micro gratitudes from the previous day. So I do that. Then I ask, in my contemplative mind of Christ, spirit of Christ, I'm asking myself, what am I afraid of today? And then I'm just journaling some of those thoughts. And then I'm asking myself, like, well, what do I feel now that I've actually named some of those fears? Then I'm asking the Lord, like, well, what do you want to do in that space? And how do I begin to partner with you in the rest of the day together? And it's something that I'm practicing. And I think men who choose to practice it find a level of growth that is happening. One particular business owner, he's actually in the middle of selling his business right now. He was in the group that I referenced earlier on Monday, and he's in Thursday, Friday meeting as we record this, trying to negotiate a path forward. And he said, man, I didn't even realize just that process on Monday that my 11-year-old self was still holding on to this false story that's preventing me to go into this meeting in a healthy way, right? So that journaling practice is really real. Another super pragmatic, this sounds silly when I say it, but another CEO that I'm thinking about is like, you've got to speak up for your desires, wants, and needs. And the quickest way to do that is go to a restaurant and ask the chef to make you something that's not even on the menu. And you're like, well, why would I do that? And it's like, well, because you're trying to figure out how to own your voice and have some agency in your life. And so the CEO that I'm serving, I was like, hey, what's your favorite meal? And he describes his favorite meal: steak, Brussels sprouts, sweet potato. And I was like, when was the last time you had it? And I thought, sincerely, I thought he would say like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
He said it's been at least 3 months. And I'm like, well, who shops? Who makes the menu? Who's choosing the restaurants? And he's just kind of looking at me like, oh, I see where this is going. I was like, between now and next Friday, I was like, you got to have steak, sweet potato, and Brussels sprouts. Like, because it's learning how to get your needs met. And these small ways that hopefully doesn't feel like rejection, because like you can afford the steak, go buy the steak and cook it, make it happen. And then the final thing I would just say in the context of, loving and serving your wife, helping her be this radiant and spacious person that in all of her glory that Christ has made her, is that she can't read your mind, period. So speak with clarity, kindness, directness. She actually wants your leadership. She actually wants your assertiveness. She wants you to plan the date nights. Don't put the babysitter planning on her, period. And step into owning the leadership back again at your home. And even for myself, for years, I've wanted to do dance lessons. And we've had to negotiate schedules and kids and life. But we're in a season that I've committed to almost 2+ months of dance lessons, right? Because I've stepped into like, plan the date, paid the money. And I'm like, hey, we're doing this, and I could just see in our first dance lesson the amount of peace that came over her. And I even called it out when we got in the car. I was like, man, you look like you were having a good time. I don't even know where these emotions are coming from. But she said, I'm having a great time. But right, that's what leadership is about, is helping people around you flourish. And you can only do that as much as what you're choosing to own your voice, own your leadership, and own your God-given identity in all the spaces of life that He's given you.
Thank you. Not only for the practical tips, but showing up like that. The one thing that's really significant to me is like in leadership, this idea of mirrors versus models. And I think in a lot of ways we have this idea that we create what the model should look like, and then try to artificially show up, like try to conform to the model that we have created. And in reality, the best model that we can be as a leader is actually to mirror our true identity, and to in so doing be a mirror of our story, of the grace, of the transformation of what we have experienced for others, in order to invite them into doing that in their own story. And that's so I love like so much of what you said, but that concept of for the leader to do their best job as a leader, they have to first do the work. They have to lead themselves, right? They have to do that work so that they can show up and lead in their true identity, not in conforming to some artificial model that they think is what leadership looks like. Cool. Man, thank you for your time. I'm sure we'll do this again and talk. I've all of my questions about your, the big ideas that were transformative or formative for you, whether they're right or wrong, and those things I didn't even ask. So we'll have to circle back and have another chat. But Lance, really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, I'm honored, Ian, by the gift of your time and all the ways that you've served my business to grow where it's at right now. Thank you.
My name is Ian Crawford. I collect untimely ideas, build frameworks for living with purpose, and coach executives on redeeming leadership. For more conversations, our email newsletter, and topical collections of untimely ideas, visit our website at untimelyideas.com. Until next time, hustle less, hope more, connect more deeply.